Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Midweek Message for this week. Well, there's an interesting thing happening with facial recognition right now, and I know you're going to know what I'm talking about as soon as I start talking. People have to look differently at each other to recognize each other and to recognize emotions and understand the kind of interaction that they're actually having because we are all wearing masks to protect ourselves from the virus. So for me, this has heightened looking right into someone's eyes. I can't see whether they are laughing or frowning except through their eyes. Are their eyes crinkled up in laughter and see crow's feet? They're a good thing. Are their eyes narrowed in disbelief? Is there a frown line between their eyes? What's going on with them? In order for me to know that, I really need to focus on their eyes to understand what's going on. They say the eyes are the windows of the soul, and I think in COVID times that has really become more and more true. But also, interestingly, there's been lots of research and articles about children and emotions, whether with masks on they can correctly interpret feeling. And it turns out, not surprisingly, that they've adapted. They certainly can. I've read a few articles as well about preaching and teaching with a mask on and how can people understand me in the same way that I work a little harder now to understand you. There's hand gestures and body language that help people understand what we mean even with a mask on. In general, I think most people have been able to figure this out without research being done, but I really get the concern that parents have, and they want their kids to succeed. They want every chance for them. COVID's been a big disruptor in that, and I can see why that kind of research is important and necessary. But here's the thing. We can have all kinds of ideas for how to help, how to improve, and all of those are well-intentioned, and we need them, and we need to keep generating ideas. I think that's one of the resilient and wonderful creative things about being human. But we're distressed by this disruption that the pandemic has caused, and we're trying to find meaningful ways to remain connected. So that research that's done on behalf of kids' emotional intelligence and learning is great stuff, and stuff that I've read because I too, I have some concern about how do we remain connected? How do we understand one another? How do we bridge difficult isolation gaps during this time? So I want to say we also need to value and turn toward our own experience in this time and the shared experience of our community to help us reach out and interpret, to help us connect in meaningful ways in this period of protracted isolation. So, just like the kids learning to adapt and me looking right into and around someone's eyes to help me understand them, our issues of disconnection and fragmentation in community are real and they can be brought back to their roots of what makes community meaningful in the first place. So, I know we've all asked questions. Certainly, you've reflected this back to me. Is there vision? Is there intention and means and novel new methods to create better ways to connect? Absolutely. Of course, there are. But have we figured them all out yet? Clearly, we have not. But we're working on it. And we continue to troubleshoot, we continue to brainstorm. And in the meantime, while we're looking for those wonderful, novel new methods, I want to bring us back to ourselves as a community, ourselves as St. Andrew's United Church in Cumberland. Are we connected to each other? Are we rooting for each other? What are we doing to remain connected, to let each other know that we are rooting for each other, that we are supporting each other? So, I am going to bring you to a study at this point by a woman named Kat Moore. She is an innovator, a consultant, and this is so cool. She got to name her own position at the University of Southern California in Los Angeles. So she named her job because when they wanted to hire her, they didn't even have a name for the job they wanted her to do. So she named herself the Director of Belonging. Isn't that wonderful? So she is the Director of Belonging at the University of Southern California in Los Angeles. And she wrote some articles about belonging that I have really enjoyed and I wanted to share with you today. So, in Kat's own words, she says, we have to start with our experience and allow theory and frameworks to emerge from it. As a strategy for engaging with people where they're at, we have to actually attend to the lived, complex experience of the person in front of us. If we're not experiencing a sufficient measure of belonging in the kingdom with a real body of real rough and quirky people, we quite literally have no idea how to offer that experience to anyone else. Your power to connect and create belonging for everyone around you through the unglamorous, repetitive acts of being present, listening, and caring will not only be a fantastic new discovery of interpersonal thriving, it will actually save your life and many others. That's a lot to digest, I know. Pithy, but so true and so relevant. Your power to connect and create belonging for everyone around you comes through that unglamorous, repetitive act of just being present and listening and caring and being willing to do that over and over and being willing to let somebody else do that for you when you need to talk too. And it's a privilege. So later she says in the article, she says, I think what needs to happen is for belonging to be understood as the foundation on which all other church activities are built. Belonging needs to be the foundation on which all other church activities are built and through which people are empowered to respond to the opportunities and the needs around them. It's not just a little separate focus, it's the matrix. And I think she's right. That deep sense of belonging, of being recognized and known, belonging in the best sense of the word where we feel deeply at home, that is so essential. It's essential to our mental health, it's essential to our physical health, and certainly to our spiritual health. So she has this formula called CLICK, which stands for C, connecting as is, L, listening first, I, investigating without judgment, C, communicating kindness, and K, keeping in touch. Click. So connecting just the way you are, like Mr. Rogers, just the way you are. Listening first, then investigating without judgment. So just probing a little because you care and without judgment. And then communicating kindness, which is certainly part of our golden rule. So it is part of what God calls us to. And then keeping in touch so that it's not a one-off. Now, I don't always love formulas because they can trivialize really hard work. They sometimes make the process seem easier than it actually is, or make it seem successful before you have to put the time in to make it work properly. But I really honor the work that she's done to get here. She started it at a Starbucks, just being herself, and her job at the university came out of just listening to the people around her and responding to them and engaging with them over and over. It is slow work, and it is work where you listen and where you remain present in the moment with another person. I actually, I'm sure you guys know this, I actually find it joyful and privileged work because I do that with you a lot. I listen to you on the phone right now because it's not safe to see each other in person much. But when it is, we see each other and I listen, and I just love that. I think it is what makes a sense of belonging so real when we just listen and love one another and are truly interested in what's going on with each other when we take care of each other in the simplest and most fundamental way. And when I think of Jesus's stories, I think of all of those times where he was present. I mean, there are so many beautiful stories. I'm going to name three, but I could literally tell you more, way more than three. And the Bible in that way isn't the biggest book. But here's three quick ones. When he sat at the well and listened to the Samaritan woman, and he deeply listened to her, and then when the woman who was bleeding touched his robe and he feels it and he turns around and he recognizes and speaks to her and heals her. Or when Nicodemus, who's really troubled and really trying to find some bridge between the truth that he sees in Jesus and the Pharisees and the whole teaching and governmental structure of the Jewish religion. So he shows up late at night to speak with him. And they come to this beautiful understanding. Those are just three quick examples where Jesus does just exactly this, where Jesus is present and listens and does this slow work, but that work changed the world. It might have seemed small. It might have seemed, well, it's just one person. But think of the ripple effect and think that all these years later, we're still informed by the kindness and the presentness that we see in him. I could go on and on about these stories. It's that work of changing lives and changing the world when we connect with others and make it a spiritual discipline of our life, to see it as a way to be love in our community, to be love in our family, love in our world. And it is a discipline. It's not something you can just do when it feels good to you. Sometimes it's hard to listen and be present for someone else. And sometimes you desperately need somebody to do that for you. Those are all good things, part of a spiritual discipline of a golden rule society where we love others in the way that we love God and ourselves. And it doesn't start by trying to get others in to join us. It doesn't start by trying to get bums in seats. That kind of desperation, that is not part of a healthy community. It starts with us taking care of each other. It starts with us truly being there for each other. That other stuff, people join when they see real love and real belonging and real acceptance. People want to be part of that. People know what love looks like and what vitality looks like. And that starts by taking care of each other. And yes, being willing to welcome others into that beautiful circle of grace. But it starts by creating that circle of grace. And that is something that during this pandemic, I really feel so strongly that we are doing and we can do, and we need to make a spiritual habit in our lives, in our community, as part of who we believe we are as St. Andrew's United Church in Cumberland. So, that other stuff, that's just the beautiful, beautiful byproduct of love that we show and that we act on and that we embody. So you can feel good about that. And if you're not doing enough of it, reach out to someone else. And if you desperately need to be heard, reach out to someone else. It's always the same thing. People will listen. I will certainly listen. You know where to find me. Isaiah 40 says, comfort. Yes, comfort my people, says your God. Comfort my people, says God to us. We could do worse than to comfort each other in difficult times, in isolated and lonely times. So I pray that we be nourished by the love that God is, because we have to draw our source from somewhere, and we know who we draw our source. We know what our source is, God, who is love, and that we nourish and comfort and encourage one another, that slow, steady work of God as we continue to navigate this isolation that we're experiencing, but knowing that we are not doing it alone. We do it with God and we do it with each other. So, in this together with you, and until next week, Stephanie signing off.